So we were retreating, and I was on the left side of the road, and there was a column on the right-hand side. And there was a guy who was a rinky-dink from way back. He was no good. He was in trouble all the time. He opened up a can, and whatever it was, pork and beans or spaghetti, he spit in it, and he handed it to one of these Korean ladies who had a kid on their back, dragging another little 4-year-old through the snow. He says, "Here, Mama-san." And I walked over there, and I'm swearing at him, and he's swearing at me. I says, "How in the hell can you do this?" I says, "That woman is just as human as you. She's nothing but a gook. And we're just about ready for blow. And I hauled off and I hit him one. I fattened his lip and gave him a black eye. And I thought, well, there goes my stripes. And about 2 days later, I see the first sergeant. He says, "Waldschmidt, come here." He says, "I heard you and Driscoll got into it. I heard Driscoll's story." He says, "He wants me to court-martial you." I said, "Well, that's up to you." But he says, I told him my side of the story and I says, if I had another chance, I'd hit him again. And he says, "Well, I'll tell you something." He says, "I'm not going to court-martial," but he says, "Did you hit him with your right or your left?" I says, "I hit him with my right." He says, "Well, why in the hell didn't you hit him with the left right away?"
We read in the newspaper, hear on the radio, they're fighting in Korea, the boys are called to go to meet.
The Korean War was a war between North Korea, backed by China and the Soviet Union, and South Korea, backed by the UN. After the Communist North Korean army invaded South Korea, President Truman directed U.S. troops to assist the South Koreans. Marvin Waldschmidt, a Wisconsin native, was one of these troops.
Lead us through this war, give us victory in Korea, and save our boys so fine. God, please protect America in this troubled time.
My name is Marvin Waldschmidt. I was born Campbellsport, Wisconsin, little town south of Fond du Lac. And there was 3 buddies of mine and myself. We were working at a factory just like a robot, and nobody liked it. So one of them got the idea, let's go join the army. So we didn't tell our folks we were gonna, and we hitchhiked up to Fond du Lac. And the recruiter was the end of October, and he hadn't made his quota yet, and he just welcomed us with open arms. And we wanted to stay together, but it's hard in the service. So we made up our mind that if one person wanted to go to a certain school or apply for something, either nobody did or we all did. And it worked out. Took my basic training, Camp Atterbury, Indiana, which isn't even a post anymore. And basic training for me was fairly easy. From Wisconsin, you're hunting and fishing and ice fishing and doing other things. And I learned this real fast in the service. To get along in the service, there's 3 things you got to do. Keep your eyes and ears open and your mouth shut, because you'll get in trouble every time you open up your mouth. Some guys, when we pulled up to the barracks with 2 sergeants, there were some guys that were recruits just like we were, sitting on the front steps, and one of them hollered, "You're suckers, you're in the army now." Well, I seen them at 2 o'clock in the morning. Got up, went to the bathroom, looked out the window. They were pushing the lawnmowers with a flashlight, mowing the lawn at 2 o'clock in the morning. After basic, we went to Japan. We were going to go to Alaska, but our ship in Seattle, Washington was in dry dock getting repaired, and he said we could go to the Far East Command if we wanted to the next day. And we all thought, hey, we're going to Hawaii. No, we went to Japan. Japan was very good duty. And I got to tell you one thing about Japan. Everybody knows what a rickshaw is. You've seen, this is the one from the parade in New London, but anyway, we were about 4 miles from our camp, and the last streetcar left at 12 o'clock at night, and we missed it. So we hired this old man to take us to camp 4 miles away, and it's raining. And anyway, this old guy must have been about in his high 60s, 70 years old, and he was about ready to die. So I told him, I says, "Papa-san, I'll pedal, you sit back here." And he did. And I had a few beers in me. And you know, when you cross the streetcar track, you cross them straight across. You don't cross them at an angle. Well, I crossed them at an angle. And I wound up in a candy store. I went through the front window of the candy store, candy all over, glass, plastic. The MPs came, the military police, the Japanese police came. I'd say about 100 civilians got out of bed to see what was going on. And the MPs was a young kid, PFC. And he was bound determined he was going to put the handcuffs on me. And this lady, Mama-san, they called her, that owned the candy store, she says, "Nai." She says, "Good GI." And she'd get between me and the MP every time he'd get his handcuffs out. And she'd get right nose to nose with him. And another 2 more MPs came. And anyway, I told Mama-san I'd come the next morning and I'd pay her. Well, I didn't know how much my bill was going to be. But it cost me $340 to fix a candy store up. And I was making $500 a year. And then the Korean War started, and we were the first division to go over there. And I didn't even know where Korea was. But I found out real quick. Korea is a godforsaken place. Nobody wants it. These are the mountains of Korea. And the further north you go, the bigger the mountains get. It was up one mountain, down the other side, a little valley, up another one. And all over Korea is nothing but mountains. The weather there gets pretty cold. This is how they look after the snow comes and that. And then the winds come out of Siberia and out of Russia, and it gets pretty cold. The coldest it got was two nights. It got 32 below zero. And we were out in, they only had little pup tents and that. And we did not have mittens, we had gloves, so your fingers get cold. We had nice caps with ear laps. We had field jackets, we didn't have parkas. We didn't have snowmobile boots, which we called Mickey Mouse boots. And I never was so cold in all my life. You had to take your rifle and put it underneath your jacket to keep it warm, otherwise it'd freeze up and wouldn't function right. And as we went through Korea, I told you 4 of us went in there together. Okay. This is one of the guys that went with us. Okay. Kenny came back with the Silver Star, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, very highly decorated. I came back with the Purple Heart, the Bronze Star, Good Conduct Medal. Jim came back without a scratch. And Norman came back in a pine box. And the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, when I lived a half a block away from them all my young life, who were great buddies, is to walk up to his mother and dad's house and talk to them. 2 times I tried to walk up that little hill. 2 times I started crying, I turned around and I came back. The 3rd time I made it. This picture here when the North Koreans invaded South Korea, some small town, they picked up the the mayor, chief of police, any high businessmen, any clergy, and they made them dig their own grave in a prison yard. And I actually, this is out of a newspaper, but I actually seen this. You could smell this about a mile away. And I never want to see it again. This is a picture of General MacArthur who came to our unit. And I was about a city block and a half away from him, and he just went past his Jeep and gave us a salute and kept on going. He didn't have time for us. This is a picture of Seoul, Korea when I seen it the first time. It was bombed out pretty good, but there was some buildings left. About a year later, I went through the town of Seoul, Korea, and this is what it looked like. It was about 6 foot high, and this was a city about the size, between Oshkosh and Milwaukee, roughly that size. These are some North Korean prisoners. They became prisoners. They're surrendering to us, and a lot of them, the American planes would drop these, what we called good conduct. And if they had one of these, they'd be waving it to you, and you're supposed to let them surrender. We've seen a lot of that. And when we would retreat, you'd get our trucks and our tanks would be going down the middle of the road. You'd be walking 2 columns beside them. And anyway, the refugees would be on the outside. Now, if I'm cold when it's 5 below zero, you take a refugee, and you ought to often see this, a young girl with her brother or sister on her back. Because Daddy went to war, she hasn't seen him in maybe a year. Any older brothers. Her house and her mother most likely got killed the last, and she's taking care of her little brother or little sister, carrying them on her back. And they hasn't eaten for a couple days. I felt sorry for the civilian population, whether they were South Korean or North Korean, because all of a sudden there's casualties in their own family. Their home has been blown up. They don't have a job. They don't know where their next meal is coming from. You feel sorry for them, whether they're on the other side or on your side. I had 5 years in the regular Army, and then a total of 33 years in the Army Reserves. And this is a diagram of rank in the Army. You start up here, you wind up down here, you hope. Well, I made it down here. I made my command sergeant major, which is very few of them. There's 1 in a battalion, 1 in a regiment, 1 in the division. Got 2 medals that I'm very proud of. I had the Purple Heart, which I got shot in the right thigh and in the butt. I was in a Jeep, and we come up to our roadblock. Our MPs were there because the Chinese were on both sides of the road, and they'd let some convoys go through and some they wouldn't. They'd fire on them. Well, we had a Jeep, so we're going to lead this convoy through. We got about halfway through, and then the Chinese started firing on us. And when we did stop at this MP checkpoint, I was driving. I changed drive. I became the passenger, and I let this other guy drive. I never should have done that. I wouldn't have got shot then. This is the Good Conduct Medal. It's very easily to get. It's very easy to lose it. I could have lost it twice, very easily, but I did.